Ready to go?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, welcome everyone to our work session. As you can see, I am not in the chamber today. COVID's caught up with me as well as a lot of other people. But I am going to turn over chair duties to Councilmember Bliss because I think it'll be a much more efficient meeting if somebody in the room is actually running the meeting. So thank you very much, Pam, for taking on this, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. We will start with meeting issues and updates. Sarah, would you like to begin?
I can, but I don't have any updates today.
Emerson?
I don't have any updates from any commissions, but I do want to make an announcement that the Webster Rock Hill Ministries will be having a food giveaway, school supply giveaway, health fair this coming Saturday from 10 to 1 at Ivory Crockett Park.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Emily, I'll give you a minute to get settled. David, do you have any issues or updates?
Nothing, Councilwoman.
And Karen, how about you?
No, I have no updates. Thank you.
All right. Here. Do you have any issues and updates for us?
I don't think I do.
Okay, yep, I'm good. I will turn to Neil. Does Neil have any issues or updates?
The only update I would say is that I attended the Baroque concert on Friday night. The mayor was there. I know I saw Councilperson Bliss there, and Councilperson Hickson Shepherd was there. And again, it was a lovely evening. What a night. The music was fabulous. It was really, really a great performance.
Excellent. Dr. Peoples?
The only update I will share is that we just hosted, literally right before this meeting, the Charter Review Advisory Board Informational. Mayor Arnold led it. Neil provided a lot of information. So I would encourage anybody who did not have an opportunity to watch it to please look online. And if they're interested in applying, to please do so.
Excellent. And then Mayor, do you have any issues or updates for us?
I do have a couple of things. Thank you very much. First, at that informational session, one of the things that some of you may have noticed that I was listed as a council liaison. I am full aware we have not made that choice, so no one's presuming anything. So just make that clear. The council needs to speak on that issue. We do have a limited number of current applications for the Charter Review Advisory Board. You all saw that list, and we could barely fill out the board right now. And so one of the questions is, do we want to extend that deadline a little further if we don't reach, say, 15 or 16 or 18 applications, so that we can work toward that diverse group of people that we wanted to have on the commission? And that really is an open question to you all. If you will remember, I think it's the 29th is when applications close. We have the first set of interviews scheduled for the 2nd, but we certainly could schedule early applicants for that time. And then the 11th, I believe it's the 11th, that is the second round of interviews.
I think keeping the application process open is a good idea.
I think it'd be good to keep it as the 29th first, maybe, and see how many we have. And then if we need to extend it, then it would probably be good to extend it then. Is that what you're suggesting, or did you think we need to go ahead and extend it now?
I think we can do it either way. I don't mind either way. I just think our goal is to make sure that we've got lots of different kind of people on the commission, and we need lots of people to pick from if that's going to happen.
Well, we
So
still
I guess
there's
Go ahead,
still
Sarah.
10 days till the deadline.
Mhm.
And I think, as deadlines go, people tend to wait.
So how about this? How about so we have 9 members we'll select. How about if we don't have 18 members or 18 applications by the 29th, and we'll hold it open for an additional week to give a few more people time to apply. And hopefully we can, have a bigger pool.
I'm comfortable with that.
That makes sense.
That sounds good.
Do we have any more announcements in the Webster Kirkwood Times about the?
We do. My little column for the Webster Kirkwood Times on our full page ad deals with the Charter Advisory Review Board and does give information about applying.
And it did run last Friday too. Okay.
All right, I just have one other thing. A couple of you have given me questions for applicants, and a few of you have given me some ideas of things to suggest the commission or the board take a look at. If you still want to do that, please do that within the next couple of days so that I can begin to try and sort through that so we can review it before we send it to candidates. Review the questions before we send to candidates. We'll review the list later as a group, list of suggestions later as a group.
Sounds good. Next, we can move on to our topics, and the first one is. Katie, do you have anything?
Oh, no, I
Okay.
informed Pam in advance. I didn't have anything.
I just didn't want you left out.
Yes. Katie does count, despite the fact that I didn't ask her. So the first topic for this evening is the fitness center expansion, and Scott Davis is gonna let us know what's happening.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here tonight with the recommendation that I'm not exactly excited about making, but my recommendation is, as you all read in the memo, is to return the municipal park grant commission that we received last year for $475,000 to build an addition to the rec complex for a fitness center expansion for our studio for fitness classes. When we first started planning for that space, it's about 2014 when I first started. Fitness was booming pre-COVID. We didn't have enough space for rentals and fitness classes, and a lot of our fitness classes were in our rental rooms. Since that time, as that plan moved forward and then COVID hit, our fitness is down about half what it used to be. Rentals are down as well. So we really don't have the current need for that, as well as with the costs, the way costs have been rising. If we went out to bid on this today, I firmly believe it would be $150,000, $200,000 over budget. That's where the market has been on other projects that we put out in the 20-25% range. So at this point, I'm recommending that we turn those funds back in and don't accept that grant. There are no penalties for that. The grant commission, it happens. Other cities have turned them back in. If anything, it will help us get future grants quicker, because the biggest point category in that grant schedule is the dollars that you've received and used to date per capita. So by giving that $500,000 back, we would actually float to the top and get new grants a little bit quicker. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
I have one question, Scott. So the 475,000, was it a specified grant, had to be used for something specific?
Yes. So when we apply for the grants, we have to write a very specific grant application for those dollars, get quotes and bids on them, and everything. So we can't turn around and use that money for something else. If we turn it in, then we could apply for a new grant, which end of August is when the current grant round closes.
Could they be used towards our potential new pool facilities?
I have a couple planned for that in future years. Yes, in upcoming fiscal years, to apply for money to go towards the pool. I'm hoping to get 2 grants in consecutive years to go towards the pool. So we'd have over $1 million, because they just raised the total max grant allowance to 525 from 475.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Scott, can we scale down the project?
We could try. I mean, it's not a very big building to start with. The addition we were looking at was only going to be about 2,000 square feet, which is the amount of space you would need to pretty much have 1 large class or 2 small classes. We were looking to be able to separate that out and have 2 aerobics rooms. And then the goal was to also be able to open that up and have additional space feed into the current rental rooms, meeting rooms that we have. So we haven't gone out and actually designed it architecturally and engineered it yet. So there would be a possibility that we could drop that down to 1,000 square foot. I'd have to go read my grant application to see if I specified the floor space. We might get knocked a little bit on that if I had said 2,000 square feet. Or if I just said, aerobics room expansion.
I'm just thinking like in this post-COVID world, well, whatever you want to call it right now. What is it that we don't have that we need in order to accommodate this new paradigm? Is there anything?
We need more people in the building is what we really need. But I'm not sure 1,000 square foot would really do us much. I think we'd still spend $400,000-$500,000 for that. And I'm not sure how beneficial that would really be for us. Or if it's even needed at the current time span. And we can always reapply for this grant 4, 5, 6 years down the road. If fitness comes back and rentals come back and we see that need again, we can reapply for the same type of grant.
What's the capacity of the current large meeting room?
Depends on the setup you're doing, but roughly 200 if you're going to do, if you were doing a wedding reception or something like that, seated dinner,
Right.
175
Okay.
to about 200 if you're doing more of a classroom theater style setup.
And other than fitness classes, are we actively marketing for that space?
The meeting rooms.
Yes.
We have things in there, but we don't currently have a huge marketing push for them as of today. No.
I'm just curious what the rental is for the room.
The dollar rental,
Yes.
$70 an hour for all 4 meeting rooms for residents, and then there's all kinds of various other
Okay.
rates for single rooms.
All right, just curious.
Scott, I just wanted to say thank you because I know you put a lot of time into the original grant, and I know you've been thinking about this and thinking about how it would benefit the rec center. I just appreciate you being realistic about where we are right now and coming back to us with this proposal.
And Laura, you just really took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say thank you, just because considering, where we are fiscally, and even to consider the idea of if you go back with a grant, going back to maybe look at something that will help with the pool, because we are looking at, that's an expense that we have that we're having to tackle within the very near future, and just looking at a way to just kind of help from a budgetary perspective. And also knowing that if the rentals and the volume and the use come back to where they were, once they do, we have an opportunity to ask for it again. So I just want to appreciate.
I want to add my thanks to Scott. I think it was a difficult decision for you to make, but giving back $475,000 is nothing to sneeze at. But I think you looked at the big picture and made a wise decision.
Scott, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but I'm concerned about giving money back that we've received through the hard work of you and your staff. Is there any way that we can modify our application in the aspect of creating, I don't know, like an outdoor space that might be utilized a little bit more? Or does it have to be built? Does it have to be inside?
Yeah, we would have to go back and write another grant for a different plan of action. When we write those grants, the grant commission comes back and, say we're going to build 8 tennis courts. They actually come out and they count. And if you only built 7, then you don't get funding for that 8th one or whatever it would be. So they're pretty specific about the grant you apply for is the dollar amounts that they're going to pay you back for. So if we went and did something different, then they wouldn't pay us this $475,000 in this grant round.
It would be easier for me at least to say, let's give the money back if we've exhausted all remedies or potential options, including resubmitting a redesign or a rework of what we believe is potentially acceptable and appropriate given these new circumstances currently.
But I guess, isn't that kind of what you're doing? Because you're saying you're going to sort of cancel the current grant application, but then know that without it being technically earmarked for us, there is basically an amount of money kind of earmarked for us in the future because we didn't use this money. So you are able to kind of repurpose that for what's really needed now as opposed to what we thought would be needed.
Correct. So we can reapply, I have another grant that I would like to write for August. And it wouldn't be for the full 475,000 at this point. It would be for Memorial Park for a new pavilion to go in that area. We've seen a huge increase in our pavilion usages. Things that are outside have been doing much better than things that are inside. So I would write a new grant for that for the current fiscal year.
But
That makes a lot of sense to me.
But that doesn't go to David's point as far, or Councilman Franklin's point, sorry, as far as using these dollars for this fitness related purpose.
yeah, you would have applied for that grant regardless of this grant, correct?
Currently, we can't apply for another one. You can only have 2 grants outstanding at a time. And we have 2 out right now. We have this one and we have a grant for $200,000 for the renovation of Blackburn Playground, which is in process right now. But I don't know that won't be installed and every bill paid and all the boxes checked by end of August.
So I'm just trying to understand the procedure here. So effectively, if we give this money back, we reapply for a new and completely different concept such as Memorial Park pavilions, correct?
Correct.
And that would not have been applied for if we had proceeded with this planned addition to the rec center.
If everything had gone smoothly and there was no COVID and we had all of our construction projects done, then we would have qualified to be able to apply for the next grant. I don't know that we would have received it due to the per capita funding points. If we give this one back, I'm really confident that we would be able to qualify for that one this year.
So one of the things Scott's not saying is that he's currently chair of that grants committee, and I don't think there's anybody who knows how it works better than he does. So I just want to remind people that that's his position.
I'm actually not the chair anymore. I gave that, or my term expired in May, but I'm still on the commission.
Mr. Dave, would you share a little bit more about what you're seeing at Recreation Complex in terms of the uptake of users and the services that are being used, and just what's declined, what's increased, if anything?
Yeah. Yes. So fitness is slowly coming back. Our revenue increased about $60,000 in the previous fiscal year over the one previous to that. So it is slowly increasing and coming back. Some of our memberships are trickling back in. Rentals is just, it's down. It has been. Some of our biggest rental groups, we've had a bridge group, that senior bridge group that comes in and plays Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And they really haven't come back much since COVID. They took a year, maybe 18 months off. They are back and playing now, but they're down to 2 rooms, almost full, where they were at 4 rooms before. Many of our other monthly or weekly renters that were daytime usage, for whatever reasons, haven't come back. I think the prevalence of Zoom and being able to do those meetings not in person is a huge trend. We are still seeing some weekend rentals, the occasional wedding shower, bridal shower, baby shower, wedding shower, rentals of that, birthday parties, things of that nature. But a lot of our rental space now is being used by our other user groups. The figure skating club rents the meeting rooms for off-ice training. Some of the hockey teams rent for off-ice training. Gymnasium is pretty much booked up with volleyball and basketball rentals and such, and pickleball in the winter when it comes back in. But we're just down in numbers in general across the board from where we were 3 years ago. And that has been increasing over the last 2 years. I hope that trend continues, but at this point, we just don't have enough people to justify this. What was planned at 650, and I think would probably come in closer to $800,000 project if we were to build it today.
Are there things that people are asking for that we don't offer right now? That you think we
Childcare
Sure.
is something that's always asked.
There's always-
I hate to even answer that one. I'm a parent myself, but childcare is something that a lot of fitness facilities or recreation complexes have. It was originally designed into our building and cut 20 years ago when the building was built due to budgetary concerns and space needs. It's a service that you would run. It would be a money loser on that actual service, and the hopes that you would maybe sign up more families for fitness memberships if they had a spot for junior to go to for an hour while mom or dad went and worked out or whatnot. That's really the only thing that the big thing that we're missing, other than a dedicated large format fitness studio. But we don't need that large format fitness studio currently.
Scott, so the daily rentals that we have during the week, like the Bridge Club and some of the things like that, were those typically more geared towards seniors?
It just all depends. In the past, we've had real estate agencies. Yes, there's a lot of senior programs in there with cards. The card club was probably our biggest daytime user for the 9 years that I've been here. They've typically been in there 3 days a week, all 4 meeting rooms. That's a huge, big rental. But yeah, there's various business and civic organizations and family events that are also rent those meeting rooms, but they've all taken a hit in the last couple of years.
Right. Well, and I can understand too how some of this is going to be adjusting to the new normal, because again, with still the uncertainty with COVID, my thought was if there was a significant amount of the usage that was taken advantage of by seniors, we're probably going to be the least likely to want to come out and congregate again publicly, because there's just still too much uncertainty. And I kind of think it probably is kind of why it's very wise to try to have an adjustment period here to see what things are going to actually look like going forward. It's sort of hard to tell what to plan for, with the exception of knowing that during the summer and fall, there's some outdoor usage, but it's almost hard to even contemplate what it is that you're trying to plan to provide services for, because it's hard to tell what the need is going to be.
Yes, ma'am. And that's the biggest reason why I brought this recommendation forward. Dr. Peoples and I discussed it back in the early spring when we were putting the budget together. We were still kind of coming out of COVID, and I was hopeful things would rise faster, but it hasn't. And at this point, in my opinion, it's not fiscally responsible use of our money or the grant commission, which is ultimately the taxpayers. They're paying sales tax. That's how we get this grant. It's ultimately not fiscally responsible to spend that money on something that we don't need, just to say we've got a bigger building and maybe someday we'll be able to fully utilize it.
All right, everybody good with that? Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All very clear. Thank you. Next, we have fiscal policy review and long-range financial planning by Mr. Peterson.
Yes, give me 2 seconds here to get prepared real quick. You also need to be able to see that. You need to see it also. This is not purpose. Madam Mayor and members, this is our beginning of fiscal policy review. I hope our mouse works. Good, it does. You have this nice packet of the city's financial policies and some other draft recommendations and issues at your desks. Those that are on Zoom, it's in the council packet that you have, and we have paper copies for you as well. I won't reprint this every time we go over policies, so this is your big stack of them to have, and you can use them as you wish. Our plan tonight is to look at some of our current financial policies, recommendations on and direction from you on new policies and revisions, prioritization of that, and then also just some talk about further financial planning for the city. This is not dive into each policy and tear it apart. It's really to help prioritize what do you see as a council, and we will certainly give you some recommendations that you want to take up first and in order. We were scheduled to start this in September, and with the availability of the work session, thought it would be good to
bring you sort of a table setting moment of what's on the table that we see as staff and what we think should come to you. And then also hear from you so that we can prepare other things that may not be in our current policy portfolio regarding our financial status. And I just want to say for all those that are watching online, this website right there, you can see all of these policies posted. They're all posted publicly on the city's website. So there are many different policies, and as I walk through them, you will see them posted there. So I just want to talk about, and I'm going to move things around and shrink this up a little bit. There we go. This is our policy pyramid. And so when we look, Neil may dicker with me a little bit about city charter and state law, considering we are a constitutional charter, but we do have some state law provisions we have to follow, even though we are a charter city. So I put state law down as sort of our premise and the foundation of what we do in terms of our financial policy. Certainly our city charter has some financial policy setting in it, our city ordinances, and then city policy. And so oftentimes these are resolutions that we pass. I'm using that term in policy there. And then top of the pyramid, execution. So there are practices that we then take out of those policies. And this is how we, as a staff, take that direction and execute for the city. So again, if you go back down the pyramid, everything, has to conform to the level below. So if you think about it, like state law says we have to have our budget out to the public, our proposed budget at a certain time. Those dates don't actually line up with our city charter, but yet we have to comply with that. So just a couple of little things like that. So lower you are, more primacy on that policy. We're really going to concentrate on ordinances and policy in this review. Because obviously, once if we make revisions to policy, then we change our execution of the policy based on what the council may direct. So in the charter, and I provided this information for you, don't have to go through it tonight, just want to provide you with Article 5, 12, and 15, all have major fiscal policies for the city in the charter. And then Chapter 3, administration, includes a good chunk of the finance policies that are in ordinance, namely the biggest portion being the procurement policy. That's in our ordinance. So you think about procurement, that's purchasing, and your role as a council on reviewing purchases and the processes by which we have to go through. And again, there's some state law and charter provisions that those ordinances must comply with. We also then have current policies in place, and I listed these in order of the most recently reviewed, or I should say adopted. The deficit reduction policy, you're all well aware of this. We just did this in the budget policy. We have a TIF compliance policy from 2012, which is on the books, an investment policy related to how the city invests its cash on hand, fund balance policy in 2009, and the debt management policy from 2008. There are what I am calling uncodified policies. So in our budget document, we've got some pages, and it's towards the back of your section here on the paper. And for those at home, that's a page, I think it's 26 in the proposed budget book. We've got some policies that we state in the budget, but we can't find if there's a resolution or an ordinance that says this is a policy. So it's here in the budget book. We operate like it's policy, but I'm bringing that up to just make the statement that we perhaps should codify it with a measure as we do with other things. And so as we talk about this, our recommendations from staff are to hopefully prioritize this review, right? The debt management policy, if you've read it and had a chance, is a mind-numbingly boring thing if you're not into debt management. But it's important, right? How we manage our debt and work through those issues. But what order should we take that up? What's the most pressing things for the council? And included in that is what else should we bring up? And I'm now speaking to other issues of financial planning. Like if we want to have the revenue conversation that we've talked about, where in your sense of priority on the fiscal planning side of things, should we be using council time and staff time to really prioritize that work? And then again, I do recommend that we look through those things that were in the budget document and codify them, have a separate standalone resolution so that it's not part of the budget narrative. Certainly that's part of the budget, but technically what you are adopting in the budget is the numbers. The narrative is simply the brief summary as required by state law. So again, in the budget document, we have a revenue policy, an operating policy, an accounting policy, and the capital improvement policy. which are all not codified outside of the budget. Capital improvement, you're very well aware of. We go through this program. Much of some of these other things you may not be well aware of, and there just have been bullet points in our document for some time. So I think we should look through those. Much of things like the accounting policy, we're not going to change. We're required to use GASB requirements for the Government Accounting Standards Board, certain other things, but it would be good to codify them and put them into the policy realm for the city. So if I take the whole of what we have, there's some things I think from, Dr. Peoples and I that we would put forward to you. One is, I think it's an easy, quick thing to do to codify what's in the budget that hasn't been, codified. That's not hard. I do think, and we talked about this as we talked about the capital improvement program, that there are moments when we have large asset purchases that come up that really stress that budget. So how do we not only revise that program, that 5-year program that we operate with, to really look at that large asset purchase, and how do we set aside funds to be ready for that and ready for those moments? It doesn't have to be a fire truck. It could be, a massive loss of a chiller in the ice rink. If the, I think it's Scott, is there a hole? Is there a sinkhole or something? There's an issue at the ice rink that we're all just like, it's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, but if it does, how do we prepare for that? In the 5-year fiscal plan policy, right now, that 5-year fiscal plan, it's a tool. That's what it is. And it's meant to show you sort of on the averaging trends where we're going. It doesn't have to be a tool. And in fact, there is some really good best practices about should we be looking at things like revenue triggers. So if revenue, the volatility of sales tax, if say a sales tax falls, we have a plan that's communicated to the public that we are going to stay within the actual cash that we receive, right? And, do we implement certain styles of reductions at certain benchmarks? That's a very big part of planning. I think that could go a long way with actually helping as the bond rating agencies look at us, that we do have a solid plan again on not only reducing the deficit, but dealing with future volatility as we go quarter over quarter if revenues dip. We don't have a position control policy that's stated at all. So right now in position control, I think this is a really easy one to look at, but position control meaning that we could, Dr. Peoples can create staff positions as long as there's funding for them. We should have something codified to what that is. I think that process works just fine, but we don't have anything codified about that at all. And then there's in my opinion, a need to look at the procurement policy. Certainly we have, our procurement policy is pretty robust and it's got a lot of good things in it, but it does have some elements of fraud prevention that we're not seeing in our policy. And a lot of that's more practice issues. We see a lot of our big vendors and a lot of transparency around who we're paying. Wright Construction, this did not happen to Webster Groves, I want to be very clear, but Wright Construction, who is our contractor for the firehouse number 2, is doing projects for other municipalities, and they have been you've seen fraud attempts to call in and say, change our deposit info for our payments, right? And so Kansas City did lose about $1 million a few years back because the accounts payable didn't do that double check. Is this actually right? In that case, the vendor there. So there's some of those changes. And then also we should look at our thresholds. We should just do that about every 3 years. What is the threshold of purchasing authority that you want to have at the council level, what is the manager level, and what can simply be done by the departments, especially with inflation and other issues that come along. So those are some of my recommendations as we go through this laundry list of things. And I then wanted to give you the list of policies that we've talked about. Don't want to go on forever tonight, but I do want to hear from you. And I've got the 6 policies that are currently, they're in black here on 1 through 6. 7, 8, 9, 10 are the ones that are in our book, our budget book, but not codified. 11, 12, and 13 are 3 that I do believe that we should take up and start to codify. And again, what sort of priority do you want to take these up? And I can give you some recommendations, but I want to hear from you all and answer questions about what's in these policies and such. Before we dive into that, I'll tell you that I don't believe, I looked through, I'm not sure that any of them have been reviewed every 3 years. I couldn't find evidence of that, but they should be. And so once we get on a schedule, I'd like to then build out that rolling schedule. So we're bringing back the debt management policy at the appropriate time, maybe not change anything, but just the fact is we do review it and we understand what our policy is about it.
So is the thinking that we would schedule them out to discuss over like how long a period, I guess? Like,
Yeah.
are we trying to kind of fit them all into,
Yeah, no, I mean, next month I'll get them all done.
right?
No, I'm joking. We anticipated starting in September. I think part of this conversation about prioritization with the next slide as well, like that conversation about revenue and those other issues. If we could have this process, these are not all one policy per meeting, right? I mean, some of these I think are really going to be, everything's fine, even from my perspective. We're checking the box that we've reviewed it and looked at it. But when we go into the next budget process, if we could have made major headway, next March on, most of this list, I think we'd be in a very good statement. And again, looking to our next round of bond issuance, it speaks not only to the community, but to the underwriters. We are doing our appropriate reviews and diligence necessary here as the administration and the legislative leadership. So my question to you all is there anything that jumps out that you want to start with that you feel like should be on top, should be on bottom, and your thoughts?
I think it's pretty clear, just in my opinion, that we all have talked about revenue as being a focus. And that if we start there, that's a good place to start. And to be honest, Eric, maybe you could tell us at some point what the easy ones are, so that if we do some hard ones, then we could check off an easy one after that, just so we feel like we're making progress.
Yeah.
I know it maybe does sound a little silly, but you like to see that you're moving ahead.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to see the revenue policy reviewed and the debt management policy and the fund balance policy. All those kind of go hand in hand. Definitely want to make sure that we stay in tune with revenue received and money that we spend going out. So I think that's very important.
I
So,
think capital improvement policy too, like knowing those big expenses and being able to plan for those, especially before the next budget cycle.
So let me, if I can, just real quick on capital improvement, give you a sense of what that may look like. It's not just simply a piece of policy, but there will be some practice there. We don't have a capital asset management program in place here where we have plugged in the 20 years of the rec center farther out, right? And so that's really that large asset purchase and replacement policy, that's a whole bucket there of there's going to need to be some investment, relatively small, but of time and of potential resources into really developing that longer plan of, okay, we get about $1.6 million of capital improvement fund every year. How are we going to deal with these assets we own that are valued at about $85 million?
I mean, I would be curious about the flexibility that we could build into that capital improvement policy for things that come up that are unexpected or earlier than necessary, or even, is there flexibility from pushing things back? I think we hear about that, pushing things back a little bit, but not if there's an urgency that comes up.
okay. And with the capital improvement policy, I like to see some future planning. We know that we have to replace XYZ in year 4. Start accruing for that expense now. If we can put away X amount of dollars every fiscal year, then when it does hit, we're kind of saved up for it.
I mean, it seems like with the position control policy, we talk about staffing as being such a large amount of the budget. Do you think there's a reason to look at that now, or is that kind of, off in the future?
Honestly, position control policy is a relatively simple policy to
Okay.
pass, right? It's not a matter of how many people we're staffing. It's making sure we're clear about the authority on how to create positions. That's what a
Or
position
eliminate
or
positions.
eliminate positions, right? But that in the charter really lays that out. I mean, we're not operating without a policy. The charter, clearly delegates administrative power
Yeah.
and legislative power. We just don't have anything written outside of the very general bounds of the charter about that.
If I had to give you a number, I would like to see number 3, 4, the fund balance policy. I think we had talked about that earlier this year. And looking how we're going to create our reserves, what the percentage is, and if we're going to put any type of ceilings to it. How high or how much do we want to have in that reserve? If it gets that X percent, do we stop? And then revenue and operating. I think those are my triggers.
3, 4, 7, 8. Okay.
David and Karen, do you have any comments?
Yeah, well, my first was, of course, revenue. I mean, because I just think that it's just very critical that we take a look at that. And then the 5-year fiscal plan policy, well, biggest for me is the revenue policy. And then, and I gotta agree, the debt management policy and fund balance, those things are kind of go along with that. But revenue is basically what came to mind for me as a priority first.
David?
I would say the 5-year fiscal plan, just because of where we are currently, I think that would be the most important thing for us to proceed with.
Thanks. Thank you. Emily?
I mean, I agree about revenue and capital improvement, fund balance by the 5-year as well.
Sarah, you haven't commented.
I do like the idea of codifying the things that aren't codified today. I think that's a good place to start even. But yeah, I'm generally in agreement with what's been said.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
But Eric, is there a time frame we're looking to maybe complete this process or?
Well, again, I would hope that we could have some good improvement by March, again, for the next budget book, that we have a lot of these policies well put together again. That'll our debt review before we go to bond potentially in April of 24 will be next middle of 23. So have these policies in place so that review can see these policies and see what we're doing with them. That's my goal. Some of these things don't have to be in place to affect that in a big way. The 5-year fiscal plan policy, again, doesn't even really have to be a policy. I'm finishing building it out for all the rest of the funds. So you'll be able to see every fund and where we're averaging and what the nexus looks like for those. But again, that's just a tool, right now to show you where we're likely heading. You can affect that, right? Again, this could speak to the revenue conversation. So we see that we're going to plan a potential revenue increase or asking the citizens for something, if that's what the council desires. So that would be my goal, to have this sort of over the winter conversation with you about those things as we prepare for the next budget. Again, some of these are not going to take long. My review of the debt management policy is it's a very good policy. I don't see many things that I would offer changes on. I think it's really, we just need to review it and show that we're staying on our own path of reviews. There's other ones, the TIF compliance policy. I have to be honest with you, with the changes in state laws about TIFs, I don't know if it even applies anymore. It's so old. It may just be one that we repeal off the books. So some of these things are going to roll relatively quick and we can put them together. Procurement, I think, could take a bit longer. That's obviously an ordinance, and we want to make sure that we're following all the provisions of the charter. The charter is really persnickety about procurement and has some real definitive provisions. So, and I will just say that while there, some of the stuff, if there are charter involvements, that may be a point to say, like, this really needs to go to the Charter Review Board to have a look at something if there's a charter issue. I do plan just to recap what I've heard here. Revenue certainly has risen to the top. Obviously involved with revenue, I got a lot of the revenue policy, obviously, the fund balance policy, debt management, and 5-year fiscal plan, the capital programs. We can start with revenue right in September. My plan with revenue was to give you a full scale. Here's our revenue streams and how they come in, where they're generated, what they look like. Also right down to the point of what kind of property actually makes us revenue. Some of those conversations that aren't normal part of our revenue conversations. And including in that, I've asked the county treasurer to review the PowerPoint that I put together to make sure I'm replicating the pooled sales tax formula the correct way so that you can, that does have an annexation algorithm in it. That's sort of funny. Doesn't really affect us much, but I want to make sure I'm describing it correct. So that was my goal for starting point in September. But within that, I mean, we can take the operating policy and the accounting policy per se, and deliver drafts to you all. And if there's no major issues, I mean, they can go in front of you as a resolution and be codified without much need for council time.
I do want to clarify, in the revenue policy, that's not creating new revenues. It's
No.
just an understanding of what we have already coming in.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
The revenue policy is about what's already on the current stream. I think I'm hearing the council wanting to understand that current stream and what its volatility is and what its limitations are.
well, that's what I want to make sure
Yeah.
everybody understands.
Right.
It's not creating new revenues. It's actually understanding what we already have.
So I just wanted to double check, Dr. Peoples and Mayor, did you have any other comments?
I do. Thank you, Councilwoman Bliss. As council has these conversations, obviously it's important for the fiscal health of the organization, but in many ways, this also feeds into the upcoming strategic.
I can't hardly hear Marie.
I still don't see. Is that better?
You're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. My apologies. So obviously this conversation feeds into the fiscal health and as we reach another budget season, but in many ways it also feeds into the strategic planning conversation that council will be having. Of course, the strategic plan is council's to set, but I can't imagine there wouldn't be some sort of fiscal sustainability component to it. So this really, I think, starts that strategic planning work a little bit earlier, if you will. So there's many reasons why we would engage in this and move down that path early.
I won't turn the camera back to me because it's more important to hear from you. The final slide is we've heard about revenue. We obviously know we've gone a long ways on spending with deficit reduction. In those two categories, and what else? Are there other things that are financially related to the policies that the city has that you want to bring up, that you want us to start preparing for this next 6 months, I'll say, to really dive into and put some research and resources behind? You don't have to answer all that tonight, but I do want to prime that conversation so we can use your time wisely.
I think it would be interesting if we can time some of this with our next quarterly financial report. Because when I think of what else, there might be something in that.
Yeah. We will present you quarterly in October and then in January. So we're waiting for the county to get revenues in to give you some good numbers. So I think we'll start that revenue conversation in September and give you the baseline of sort of how things work. So you can see that and the constraints we see. And then as we go through the quarter, we'll see, revenues, you saw the state, just to give everyone a sense of revenues, revenues are moving up in a good way. In general, across so many local governments, you got a lot of economic activity despite inflation that's helping to prime the pump. You have another very big outstanding fear of recession potentially hitting the next few months with where things are at. And so I'm by no means an economic prognosticator. I can't tell you if a recession is coming, but again, to revenue policy and also to the spending side, this gets to our plan of what do we do when with volatile revenues, we do hit a recession, and how do we address our own ability to stay sustainable.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then finally, tonight, we have appointments to boards and commissions. We just have one appointment request from Ben Eckler. He's served 2 years on the Parks and Recreation Commission. He's the current chair. Do we wish to reappoint? Reappoint? Yes. All right. Thanks. And with that, I think we are finished with our work session. We'll have about a 10-minute break and then be back at 7:30.
As people say, it's a mild case so far, but
Yeah,
you know,
I woke up with the
All right. Welcome to our meeting this evening. As you can see, Mayor Arnold is on Zoom, and so I'll be leading the meeting as it just is a little easier to manage in person. We welcome you to the regular meeting of July 19th, 2022, and welcome comments from those here this evening and on Zoom. Please be reminded that comments are limited to 3 minutes, and if you wish to speak, please complete a speaker card and give it to the city clerk. And if you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature at the start of the remarks of visitors. And with that, we will begin the roll call.
Mayor Arnold,
here,
Councilmember Bliss.
Here.
Councilmember Franklin,
here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander,
Here.
Councilmember Richardson,
Here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Here.
All right, so this evening, we have Community Days Awards from our annual parade. And with that, Scott Davis will present.
Good evening. Thanks. It's a pleasure being here tonight to give out these awards for our Community Day July 4th parade. I've got a few thanks I'd like to offer and praise I'd like to offer first. There's quite a few city departments that are involved in the parade. Police and fire both helping make sure everybody's safe. Public Works is putting out barricades for us. Parks and Rec is kind of organizing. There's a bunch of other departments that are all help out as well too. Huge shout out goes to the Webster Groves Masons. They're our marshals of the parade. We really couldn't pull this parade off without them. They put in hundreds of hours collectively, hosting our safety meetings, marshaling the actual day of parades, check-in stations and things of that. And then the schools and the churches down at the starting line, the high school and Christ Lutheran Church both open up their facilities to allow restroom usage to all the parade participants, which when you get there at 8 o'clock in the morning can be very helpful for a lot of folks. And then all the schools and churches and buildings up and down the whole parade route that allow parking and folks to be around is good. And then final thanks for this year to our judges, Tim Keenan, Joan Schaefer, and Cricket Vandover. Sorry. And with that, I'd like to get Councilwoman Bliss down to help me hand out the actual awards to those that are here to receive them tonight. All right. And our first award of the evening goes to the Webster Groves Fire Truck for the Civic Entry, Best in Civic.
You never.
Next is our Classic Division Outstanding Award goes to the Rosencotter Family Fire Truck.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, no.
Oops. The Rosencotter Family Fire Truck's Outstanding Classic Division, sorry. Outstanding Civic Division goes to the Rotary Club of Webster Groves. The Outstanding Visiting Entry goes to the St. Louis Corvette Club. In the novelty division, the best award goes to the Society for Creative Anachronism. I said that right? Anachronism. I said that completely right. And our final award for this evening is the Special Judges Award goes to Christ the King Church.
That everybody?
That's everyone. That is everyone that is here this evening. Thank you all for participating.
Nope, didn't get that one.
Councilwoman Bliss. If I can, I'm sure council would like to join me in thanking Mr. Scott Davis for all of his work on the parade. Scott, you and your team put in countless hours and are often behind the scenes, and so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any speaker cards this evening?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, and I believe nothing, no hands up.
Anyone on Zoom?
Nope.
All right. Next, we are moving on to new business. And first is bill number 9188. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd, would you like to read the first and second reading?
Yes, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9188.
Second.
Bill 9188, first reading. An ordinance amending the traffic code of the city of Webster Groves by amending chapter 60, article 16, schedules, section 60.975, schedule H, parking prohibited, to create a no parking zone on the north side of Fairlawn Avenue between Oakwood Avenue and Newport Avenue.
Does anybody have any comments or questions on that? Hearing none, Neil, please do the second reading.
Bill 9188, second reading. An ordinance amending the traffic code of the city of Webster Groves by amending chapter 60, article 16, schedules, section 60.975, schedule H, parking prohibited, to create a no parking zone on the north side of Fairlawn Avenue between Oakwood Avenue and Newport Avenue.
Next, we're moving on to bill number 9189. Councilmember Smith, would you please do the first call for the first and second reading?
Yes, I would like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9189.
Second.
Bill 9189, first reading. An ordinance amending the code of Webster Groves, chapter 2, administration by amending section 2.010, meetings of the council, and section 2.040, order of business, conduct of meetings.
Does anybody have any comments on this ordinance? All right, Neil, second reading, please.
Bill 9189, second reading. An ordinance amending the code of Webster Groves, chapter 2, administration by amending section 2.010, meetings of the council, and section 2.040, order of business, conduct of meetings.
Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, Councilmember Richardson, would you please call for the approval of the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Didn't that have a nice sound to it? Pro Tem. Yes.
Yes, that means
Hey,
you're
hey,
temporarily
hey, now.
blissful.
Hey, now, let's not get too comfortable there.
I won't. Okay. Next we have appointments to boards and commissions, and we approved in the work session the second term for Ben Eckler to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Hey,
And with that,
Councilmember Bliss,
sorry?
just before you go to the executive closed session, I just wanted to say thank you for doing a great job tonight. And I really appreciate you running the meeting from the room because it went way better than it would have if I tried to do it from here. You did an excellent job, so thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. So next we have an executive closed session. Do I have any council members interested in calling for that?
And whomever would be doing that would be saying under 610-021 subsections 1, 3, and 4.
1, 3, and 4.
Yes, ma'am.
I can do it.
Okay, go for
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to call for an executive closed session regarding attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021 parentheses 1. Personnel, Missouri statute 610.21 parentheses 3. And what's number 4?
And number 4,
Is-
negotiated contract.
And negotiate, oh, I thought that was 12. Okay, and is it number 4, but parentheses 12?
Yes.
Okay, and negotiated contract Missouri statute 610.021 parentheses 12.
Do you want a second?
Second.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Yes. Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd?
Yes.
Mayor Arnold?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bliss?
Yes. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.